Okay, so the NRL season is reaching its conclusion. We've only got a couple of weeks left before finals, and what a weekend we've had. And the NRLW has just had its first Magic Round weekend. I will say this now: the weather this weekend has been absolutely awful down in Australia and New Zealand. We've had some weather delays, especially in the NRLW, and even in reserve grade. Some matches were abandoned because the weather got that bad. Um, the weather has had an impact on the matches this weekend. Still a fun weekend. Some really close score lines. Some controversy that needs discussing as well, which may lead to rule changes. You never know. But overall, a really fantastic weekend to discuss. Some really close score lines as well, which is always good to see. And yet again, the NRL and NRLW proving anyone can beat anyone. So in the NRL, the Eels kicked off the weekend against the Storm, a really close game. The Storm edging out 16 points to 10. Not a Storm-like performance. A lot of mistakes in this game. It was a closely contested game. The Storm never had full control in that sense because the Eels just would not go away. We'll stress that. A lot of mistakes though, and you can see the Storm were missing Jerome Hughes, who's obviously suffered that dislocated shoulder. We don't know if he's going to be back in time for finals or not, but you can see the Storm were under pressure and not at their best, and the Eels are showing that at fight. The Eels are showing some fight, even though they are in a wooden spoon discussion, and with their poor start to the season, you can definitely see the players are playing for each other. And they're playing for Jason Riles. The Storm, Craig Bellamy was not happy even though they won the game. The Storm also left points on the field with poor goal kicking as well. In fact, both sides had poor goal kicking. So some question marks there about goal kicking and who should be the first choice kicker for both teams. There was times when the game got a bit scrappy and the Eels made it scrappy. They also defended really, really well. Their defence has really tightened up compared to where it was at the start of the season. But even with that performance, the Storm have closed the gap with the teams above them in the NRL. Really crucial that they got the win, but they've also got to hope that the Raiders and the Bulldogs drop a lot of points, and that's something that happened this weekend. We'll get to that later on. The Warriors-Dolphins, this one again went down to the wire. The Warriors had the game in the bag with seconds remaining. The Dolphins came up with the last-minute try, quite literally in the last minute, to win 20 points to 18 away in Auckland. And the Warriors are showing some wobbly signs lately. They're losing ground on the teams above them, and the teams below them are catching them up. So they've shown a little bit of wobbly form. The Dolphins, however, are now inside the top 8, and that points differential really goes in their favour. But the concern is Herbie Farnsworth has torn a hamstring, so one of their best attacking weapons is out injured. It happened very early on, and that's also not only a concern for the Dolphins, but it's also a concern for England against Australia at the end of the season, 3-match test series. Now, from early reports, he should be back in time for that, but hamstring injuries, they can be a bit finicky, and while they're given a timeline that should see Herbie Farnsworth be fit for the end of the season test matches, he could potentially miss some, if not all, of the finals. So that's a watch this space, and that adds to the Dolphins' injury list, which is quite long. But even in adversity, they showed character to not only win the match, but win it in the manner they did. Was fantastic character shown by the Dolphins. The concern is the injuries continue to mount for the Dolphins, but they're showing fantastic character, and they just keep winning. And that points differential, which we looked at a couple of weeks ago, really is starting to look in their favour at this point. Now, the Broncos and the Bunnies. Now, the Broncos are one of those teams in the top 8 impacted by the Dolphins' positive points differential. They needed a big win at home against the Bunnies. They got that big win at home against the Bunnies. They won 60 points to 14. The Bunnies are in serious trouble. They are the first team not to be able to name an 18th man. They've run out of players. The Bunnies have literally run out of players. There are players in their 17 who are on developmental deals or training trial deals or have just been brought up from New South Wales Cup. They've run out of first graders. The Broncos, they just went to town on the Bunnies. This wasn't even fair. It was especially in the second half. They just ripped them to pieces. The Bunnies showed some fight in the first half, but they just got blown away. And there's a lot of people saying, "Well, look, Wayne Bennett's never had a wooden spoon," but this club has squad issues that I don't think previous coaches have resolved, and that also includes Wayne Bennett when he was there the first time. But the injuries are mounting up now, and the squad depth has been really, really tested. And this comes off the back of them having a really good start to the season and showing improvement. And it's looking very likely the Bunnies could end up with the spoon. Their points differential is significantly worse than the Eels and the Tigers at this point. And the Knights getting the bye. I mean, this is a very damaging for morale as well. There's no way you can concede 60 points and whilst being on this lengthy losing streak and the morale recover from that. So there are questions being asked about the efforts some of the players are putting in. But the fact that they've run out of players is quite concerning. Now the Broncos, there will be tougher tests come the back end of the season and finals. They're not guaranteed, obviously, to finish in the top 8 because it is a real battle at the moment for those spaces. I think 11 sides are fighting over the top 8 or to get into the top 8. But that goes a long way to giving the Broncos a real boost, considering that they've had some iffy performances at times this season, and they did have that wobbly streak before Origin, and timely boost for the Broncos. The Titans-Panthers is where there's some controversy. Now, the Titans nearly pulled off an upset against the Panthers. The Panthers won 30 points to 26. So this was a really close game. But, controversy corner. The Panthers trainer going in front of Jaden Campbell as he's trying to kick a conversion from the touchline. This is not the first time that the Panthers and their trainer have been involved in controversy. And I can see rules being changed over this. And I don't think anyone buys Ivan Cleary's response that it was, a mistake and he just timed his exit from the field poorly. He could have gone off the sideline or off the back and waited. That was done deliberately to put Jaden Campbell off kicking that goal. Now the Panthers really good form right now. They're hitting form at the right time. The Titans, the last few weeks, they're showing a lot more fight than earlier in the season. And again, when you're in that battle to avoid the wooden spoon, I think the Bunnies are probably at this point most likely to get it. The Eels and the Titans are showing just a lot more fight, and the Eels look like they've bought into what Jason Riles wants them to do. The Titans, they're fighting for Des Hasler's job. The Bunnies are just falling apart. But that controversy, we've seen it with the water bottle spraying the ball before, giving the ball to the opposition to kick. We've seen it, I think, last season with the trainer getting on the field and getting in the way a couple of times. This is not the first time the Panthers trainer has caused controversy during pauses in play like this, or just before penalty kicks or conversions, or getting caught up in the field of play, treating an injured player. And I can see rule changes occurring because of it. I really can. I really can see a rule change coming out of this, and the Panthers being in hot water because it goes against the values of the game a little bit. Yeah, every team will push the limits of the rules in regards to a variety of areas, but it goes against the spirit and the values of the game somewhat. And I don't buy the Panthers' excuses in that press conference. I really don't. So there's that controversy. Now the Dragons Raiders finished 18 points to 12 to the Dragons. Finally, the Raiders lose a game after their lengthy losing streak. They're still in top spot. They are still in top spot. The Dragons, this is what's frustrating with the Dragons. They can do this. They can win against top 4, top 6 sides and then lose to teams around them. Big win for the Dragons, though. It keeps their fragile, and I mean fragile, outside chances of a top 8 finish alive. I think it does somewhat ease the pressure on Shane Flanagan. Somewhat, because there's been discussions about who should be in the halves, and is Lockie Ilias been given a fair shot, and should Carl Flanagan, be dropped, and he's not getting dropped because he's his son, etc., etc. But eventually the Raiders had to lose. I think the Raiders will take that loss on board as a young team. They've got to learn, hey, they're not going to win every game. But this Dragons side been wildly inconsistent. They've had some great performances, as I say, against teams like the Storm and the Raiders, and then they're average against teams around them in the ladder, which is what's frustrating. The Raiders, I have no doubt, will bounce back from this defeat. Ricky Stewart was a bit frustrated in the press conference post-match. But it would be great to see more consistency from the Dragons. I think they have the players to be a bottom top 8 side. I think they're better on paper than what their ladder position is suggesting, and it's a difficult one. Shane Flanagan's now, they've been there a couple of seasons, but the Dragons, even though they get this win, they've been underperforming as a club for a long time. Let's see if the Dragons can back up this win with a win next weekend. The Sea Eagles Roosters. Now, this is where the weather's really starting to get bad at this point. The Roosters have won 20 points to 4 at Brookvale in horrendous conditions. Let's not kid ourselves. Absolutely horrendous conditions. The Sea Eagles, I think that's their top 8 chances done, and there are questions over Anthony Seibold's position. There are questions over his position as head coach. The Roosters, what a performance by the Roosters in real testing conditions, and some brilliant tries scored. Absolutely fantastic tries scored. The Sea Eagles were 4-0 up at one point, and then the Roosters woke up. I will admit, those conditions were absolutely atrocious. Absolutely atrocious, but the Roosters played better in those conditions. They played with more urgency in those conditions, and the fight for the top 8 is on. And at the start of the season, people were questioning whether the Roosters would make the top 8, and they're still not certain of making the top 8, but they're showing some fight for that top 8 battle. And considering some of the heavy defeats the Roosters had at the beginning of the season, they have recovered well to still be in the fight at this stage. But the Sea Eagles, it's looking very likely that that's their season's looking a little bit done. I think there's going to be questions about Seibold's position. There's going to be questions over what the makeup of the team, the Cherry Evans, what club is he going to? Everyone is saying the Roosters, although nothing's been confirmed, and I think that's also having an impact on the team. The Tigers Bulldogs, the Lockie Galvin derby. The Tigers win 28-14, again in horrendous conditions. The playing surface obviously having absorbed a lot of water over the weekend. It's just been really, really biblical conditions. Again, the Tigers, I will say this, they are a better team than what they were last season. They had a much better start to the season than what they did last season. Since the Lockie Galvin situation has reared its ugly head, their form has suffered. And Lachlan Galvin, there is no doubt he's a very good, talented young player. Not the finished article, but he's a very good, talented young player. The Bulldogs, they've had a couple of defeats in them this season. And look, they want home field advantage when it comes to the finals. And the Storm have a much better points differential. And this defeat hurts the Bulldogs in that regard. So they've slipped to third. Now, look, they're going to make finals. We know this. It's just where the top 4 the Bulldogs finish. They've had a fantastic season up to this point. They've only had a handful of defeats. The Tigers, look, they have a very, very outside shot of making the top 8. They would have to win every single game from here and hope teams above them lose and lose badly. It's not going to happen. But there was a lot of build-up to this game. I think the Tigers responded and the Bulldogs just didn't, in regards to the media build-up and the war of words and what's been said on social media. there is some pressure on Benji Marshall. I think that's eased it a little bit. The pressure now is on the Bulldogs to respond next week and try and get back on a winning streak. The Tigers, though, it's been a frustrating season for them. They can do this. They can have performances like this, which are really good, score well, defend well, play well, and then they have some they are inconsistent. But the last couple of weeks, they've shown some real heart and character in some of their performances, and people will be questioning, regardless of the Lockie Galvin situation, why they went on that long losing streak in the middle of the season and why their form nosedived. And then suddenly, in recent weeks, it's improved again. It's like the Dragons. The Tigers have been a bit inconsistent, and they're starting to put in these performances towards the end of the season, which I think are too little too late in regards to making the top 8, where they were at the start of the season with a really good start to the season, and it's sort of tailed off. But a few sides had a really good start to the season and then struggled mid-season and didn't recover. So it's an interesting one there. Bulldogs will be a bit frustrated they've lost that one. And then the final match of the weekend is the Sharks-Cowboys. The Sharks 32, Cowboys 12. The Sharks still in that fight for the top 8. And they've started to hit a bit of form at the right time when other teams are trying to chase them down and close that gap to the top 8. Cowboys, their top 8 hopes are over. And Todd Payton, again, there's going to be questions asked about the Cowboys, their squad depth, some of their squad selections, and Todd Payton. Their form has absolutely gone off a cliff in recent weeks and months. Their grip on the top 8's gone. It's like the Sea Eagles. I think their finals chances are gone, and that's two coaches under a lot of pressure at clubs that were expected to be top 8 sides. Now, the Knights had a bye this weekend because of the NRLW Magic Round taking place up in Newcastle. This has been a very interesting weekend on the Saturday and the Sunday. The weather has impacted every single match this weekend. Now, the Titans Bulldogs has made history. The Titans were running away with this, and the Bulldogs showed a lot of fight in the second half to tie it at 14-all. And it is the first NRLW match not only to go to golden point, but end in a tie. So that's made history. Brilliant game. The weather had just started to get bad, so it was raining during this game. The weather would get worse as Magic Round carried on, but considering that the weather started to turn, both sets of players put in a really good performance in what became testing conditions. It's the Tigers Roosters that really got impacted by the weather. So the Roosters win 34 points to 4, and then we have the lightning strikes and weather delays. And my God, that was monsoon-like. This was like some of the worst weather. The Sharknado at Shark Park a couple of years ago has nothing on what was happening in Magic Round up in Newcastle, because the game was delayed for some time. The rain really came down. The Roosters, look, they're putting down their premiership credentials. They're top of the ladder, winning 34 points to 4 in what was almost unplayable conditions. The Tigers are still winless. They were brave, but they were absolutely blown out by full time. But that weather was absolutely horrendous. Much like the same in the Broncos-Sharks game. And again, weather delay. This time much earlier on. The Broncos took an early lead. They were 6-0 up. And then there were a couple of lightning strikes again. Now, their game had been delayed because of the delays to the Tigers-Roosters game that was suspended for quite some time. Now, the Broncos-Sharks was not suspended for anywhere as long as the Tigers-Roosters. But just before the Broncos scored their opening try, there were a couple of lightning strikes that were picked up on camera. You could see the flashes, you could hear the rumble of thunder. They score their try, they convert their try, they get taken off the field. And while their weather delay was nowhere near as long, it still disrupted the flow of the game. The Broncos race out into a lead. The Sharks showed a lot of fight in the second half to put the Broncos under a little bit of pressure. So the Broncos weren't, I wouldn't say holding on, but they conceded some 14 points in the second half. They were on the back foot. The Sharks were the better side in the second half and showed some character. But the Broncos had done enough in the first half and adapted better to the weather delay in that first half to get the win there, to still be in second place on the ladder. Cowboys Warriors kicked off today's action. The Warriors have won 12 points to 6. And it's good to see that the Warriors have got their second win. And, after having a bit of a wobbly spell where they've lost a string of games, it was good to see the Warriors get their second win. The Cowboys, they're actually flying quite high. They've won 3 on the season so far. So the Cowboys have had a really decent start to this season. And look, it's unfortunate they've had the loss. At some point, you've got to lose a game. The only unbeaten side right now is the Roosters in the competition. The Warriors showed up. Again, the conditions weren't great. Very heavy underfoot. Still rain in the area. The amount of rain that fell the day before. I mean, I'm surprised the pitch was even playable up at Newcastle. And even in some of the other games in New South Wales, in the Sydney area this week, I'm surprised some of the pitches were even playable, considering that New South Wales Cup game was abandoned because of the weather. It got that bad. So, the Warriors played better in the conditions in a tight game. You're not expecting the best rugby league in these conditions, so they get the win there. And look, the Cowboys, they've got to take the loss. They've had a really good start to the season, and they're playing better than they have done in previous seasons. So, look, it's an expanded competition. The finals is expanded from 4 to 6 teams. We're not quite halfway yet. There's still time for teams to get into form and lose form. So there's still time in this season to bounce back from defeats like that. But it's a season where everyone's beating everyone apart from the Raiders. The Knights Raiders has finished 18 points to 8, and again the conditions were atrocious. The playing surface up in Newcastle, how it's held up for these games, considering the amount of rain that's fallen on it, is a credit to the groundskeepers. The Knights win 18-0. That's back-to-back games now the Raiders have failed to score. Back-to-back games, and their coach has come out and he's questioned some of the commitment, some of the desire of some of his players. The Knights, they had to play it tough in tough conditions, but they get over the line and they're one of the Premiership favourites. I mean, it's the Roosters, Broncos and Knights. They're the 3 favoured, backed teams in this competition. They're the ones that people are expecting to lift the trophy, and they got over the line. And while it was a scrappy first half, they had enough in the second half. But a lot of questions about this Raiders side and their fitness levels and commitment levels. Defensively, while they've tightened things up defensively in the last couple of games, they now can't score. So scoring's become an issue, and that's back-to-back games now. They've failed to score points. So this could be a very long season for the Raiders. They're not making the top 6, not even close. And they would need a miracle, I think, to turn things around. And the final game of the weekend was the Eels Dragons. The Eels have won a close game, 12-10. So you saved the best for last. There's been several close games this season, and the Eels are Premiership outsiders. The Dragons have been playing better this season than they have done in previous seasons, and the Dragons are missing a couple of key players. The Eels are, I think, a dark horse and a dangerous side that shouldn't be underestimated. Now, yes, the Warriors did keep him to 0 the other week, but other than that, the Eels are very, very dangerous. They play with a high energy. They have a good kicking game, and they've got some dangerous threats in the wide areas. The Dragons, hey, they're dangerous. They've got a good kicking game, got some threats in wide areas, but they are missing some key players out this weekend, which I think impacts how the shape of the side in attack and defence. But again, look at the conditions the sides were playing in this weekend. The fact that it was the first Magic round, the weather conditions, I think, will be spoken about for a long time to come. And the weather impacted the men's games as well, especially those games being played in New South Wales. over the Saturday and the Sunday. I mean, these weather conditions were absolutely biblical. And credit to the fact that not a single NRL or NRLW game got abandoned, but some games in reserve grade did. And, you know, it's going to happen at some point that we have another Sharknado. It's happened. But credit to those fans that turned up to watch as well. Some very hardy fans. And I am surprised some of the playing surfaces held up as well as they did, considering the amount of rain that fell in such a short time. The playing surfaces held up really well. If this was 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, we're playing purely on a mud bath by this point. So well done to the ground staff at all the venues, especially up in Newcastle, for making sure those matches were playable. But there we go. Round 22 of the NRL season and round 5 of the NRLW season in the books. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below. And that race for the top 8 in the NRL is heating up. And the NRLW, we're starting to see the teams that are most likely going to make the top 6 and those teams that are most likely not going to make the top 6 at this point of their season. So thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below. And I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.